Hello, everybody. Thank you once again for tuning into the In Win Arrow podcast. I'm your host, John, and today I'm with Dom, a psychiatrist from, well, where can we say, the Binghamton area today?
Yeah, we'll say Broome County.
Broome County psychiatrist. Very informed person. A lot of good information for us today. You can go ahead and introduce yourself if you'd like.
Yeah, my name is Dominic. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm a licensed social worker.
Oh.
Just want to put that out there. I'm not trying to impersonate a doctor.
Sure.
But I've lived in the Binghamton area most of my life. I went to school here. I went to BU for both undergrad and grad school. Throughout that time, I've worked in the community with people who use drugs, people living with HIV and AIDS, people who are, living in poverty, some unhoused people. And right now, I work in a counseling center, so I do mostly outpatient one-on-one psychotherapy. And that's really what I like to do.
Right.
In addition to the more community-based, more traditional social work stuff.
Right.
I like the intersection of the kind of political and the personal that can happen in good therapy.
Right. And I could definitely resonate a lot with that because, I'm not sure if our listeners today are understanding this, but in the past, I actually had spent some time in outpatient for some things that had happened, which I'm not sure a lot of people are 100% aware of, but it'll be some good information to be shared regardless. So the title of today's episode will be determined by what we speak about, so that's not going to be something we have to worry about the confines of a title on this video. But I do have some questions for you because of your experience so far. Basically, right off the bat, I'll just ask that, Dom. What is your experience been so far strictly with, say, the homeless population or the lower income individuals on the cusp of homelessness?
People on the cusp of homelessness. Okay, I'm thinking back to actually not even before I was in social work school. I got my start in community issues at Citizen Action of New York.
Okay, cool.
And I'm on the board there now. But before that, I was an intern / volunteer for a few years. And I would say I first started encountering unhoused people regularly during the early days of COVID there. A lovely group of women, particularly women of color, started a completely free, no strings attached food pantry. So they literally converted the office into food pantry, and anyone could come and pick out basically whatever they wanted, which was really cool because in a lot of food pantries, both in Broome County and I think everywhere, just because of the way nonprofits work, they collect a certain amount of personal information from each person. Okay. And here it was not connected to any nonprofit status, so people could come and take whatever they wanted, however much they wanted. And
without
that was
feeling like they were being, brought into something. One, maybe they didn't want their information to be known, or two, to even be seen. Because, through your understanding as well, there is a bit of a stigma of those that, if they need the help and seek the help, those on the outside perspective might be considering them in a different light than they would like to be considered.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think even going deeper than that, psychologically, someone's coming into a food bank and they're handed an intake packet, that's asking for their address, and they're unhoused. What does that say to them? That says we implicitly hate you. You are not welcome here because you don't have this address. You don't have, the right information that we want to take from you.
Absolutely. And I'm not entirely, somebody who had been in that situation to say, but hate is certainly a strong word, but the dissuasion of seeking help and the modalities that we set up for people and their only choice to get this help, if you're not creating a suitable environment for everybody that needs help to get help, then you're choosing who you choose to help, which in a term, that's a little bit of discrimination towards people.
Yeah, it just replicates the dynamics that are already the dynamics I think we're trying to ameliorate through nonprofits and through, I guess, social work in general.
And I think go ahead.
Through that experience, I started to really, really meet unhoused people and see them regularly. Every week they would come. I think it was a twice a week pantry at the time, and they would come twice a week. I would see them and talk to them and really start to see them as human and as people with their own minds and their own psyches and their own struggles and, reasons why they're homeless. And I would hear the ways that they were completely just kind of disavowed and shut out from even helping organizations or other people that are supposed to help. So it just kind of set the passion in me to be interested in this population.
I'm not sure if I can say this, and I'll edit this out if need be, but
yeah,
if you remember back when you and I were in school together, whenever this was, we spent some time in downtown Binghamton actually interviewing people, asking them questions, and some of the people we spoke to, you remember now, some of the people we spoke to were actually from the breadline at the Salvation Army. And do you remember what some of those people said to us?
I'll be honest.
I don't either. I do remember something that was very profound to me. It was an African American lady we were speaking to. One of the things she said was, "We are the same, but we are not equal."
Yeah. Yes.
I remember that very, very deeply because she's speaking to, mind you, I can say we were 16 at the time, or like 15 or 16. And this lady, I'm sure, terribly, disenfranchised, and, I can't exactly remember, so we won't speak on the specifics of the situation. But from what I do remember is that was not the first time she had ever had to be in that breadline. And so there becomes I'll use a word, I'm not sure if it's a true word, but it's, through our phonetic adherence to how we choose to decipher new words, it's a rehumanization effort. When somebody feels like they've been defeated and that they are worthless, they are worth less, and that they don't have a comparative value to people that are doing the things that they hope to one day do in life, they will stop trying. And it's when you create the stagnation of a person in their life or they stop trying, they eventually start to degrade. I forget what the quote is, but it's basically like this: get busy living, get busy dying, from our favorite songs. But moreover, it's like if something it becomes so intolerable for you that you just start giving up, your body begins to degrade, you basically start dying. So it's like, choose that you would like to do something versus concede to disparity. And that's a very difficult thing for those that are, in situations to where they don't even have enough money for food.
Yeah, it is. It's unthinkable almost. And how do you integrate that experience into a psyche that is probably already traumatized?
And exactly. I would say, if anything, we just need a larger consideration that they're still people. The end of the day, it's an issue of interpretation of that person's whole person, their body, their being, what they do. Obviously, as an ice cream man, I own Vibes World Ice Cream. I've been in downtown for a multitude of years so far. I work directly. There is nobody, I believe, that works, outside of people that are from food pantries or any type of people that have programs that work directly with these homeless populations. I work directly, like talking to this homeless person, saying, "How can I help you? What do you need?" There's people I'm on a first name. Yeah. There's people I'm on a first name basis with that I know that are homeless, and I speak to them and I'm just like, "Hey, what do you need?" There's this one lady, I won't say her name, and because it's not necessarily a great representation of her, but she came to me crying, and she has a husband, and I know she was looking for him, and she was upset, and she was like, "I'm on my period, I don't have money for pads," and they kicked me out of the store so I actually had given her money, and she went and bought menstrual products. I don't care about that. I will do that if I need to, because when I knew her, I knew her situation. She was homeless because she had some mental issues, and she's, she can't really get a job. And so that perpetuates the idea that, okay, if you can't get a job, you can't make money, you have to beg for money. And now, okay, you're in the homeless crowd. Good luck getting out of that, especially when you don't even know where to start. So, eventually you get into this habit of, okay, well, if I can't do anything, nothing's going to happen. And it takes outside intervention or some type of help for something to actually happen. So when I see her crying and I say, how are you, what's going on? She's like, "I'm looking for my husband, I can't find him, I need pads on my period, I got to throw these pants away, this and that." I was like, okay, she's like in a really bad spot. I'm going to do what I need to do. And, I tell people otherwise that I don't give out money. But just as well, where I set up on the corner of Court Street and Washington Street, there are so many different, homeless people just out on that corner. That's just where they congregate. And, right down the road is the Salvation Army Soup Kitchen as well. So there's a lot of people on that street. But the reason I bring this up is that on a certain day, I did a free ice cream day. We were launching a promotion that I had. And I went to this group of people and I said, "Tell everybody you know. Tell all the people that are always asking me for free stuff that the only time I'm going to give them free stuff is this Friday. So come on down." The only person I did not serve was one of these homeless individuals who had threatened to fight me or rob from me in the past. So that is my opportunity
Mhm.
to impose goodwill onto these people, onto this population, and doing
Yeah.
what they need and giving them directly what they need. At that time, it was just food or luxury of having a commodity of a dessert that's not, routine to what everybody else could enjoy.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it's the luxury of having someone care, having someone notice you, right?
Talk to
And
you and
that
know your
shouldn't be
name.
a
Yeah,
luxury, but it is for some people.
it is a luxury. You're absolutely right. It 100% is a luxury to
Yeah.
be considered as a person. And terrible as to say, but that's become a luxury for this population of people.
Mhm. Definitely. And something I've been thinking about, John, as I've been chewing on ideas for this episode is like, you're talking about homelessness and what to do about it and
Mm-hmm.
what we can do about it. But the overarching dynamic is like, and you might take this in a certain way before I explain it, but it's like you're kind of homeless right now. Like you're not unhoused, but you're having these ideas, and you're having these experiences in your business, and that is literally unhoused. And in a way, your experience on this podcast and trying to, solve, we can use that word, that issue,
Sure.
has been like a duplication of the homeless dynamics. Like you've gone to the city, you've gone to the police, and you've been pretty much turned away, or strung along, and then
Mm-hmm.
kind of chewed up and spit back out onto the street, literally.
I could agree with that too. I can agree with that. The dynamic is certainly one of less consideration towards those who would need it.
Yeah.
I could
Yeah, and
definitely
these
agree with that.
and these ideas, they're homeless. You're having to house them in your own podcast, which is great. But it feels like the city and the police are unable to contain them in a way that's meaningful and that's productive.
Right, and it's an issue. I'm sure you've listened to one of the podcasts at this point. The first time that I had initially gone down to speak to the city, and I had spoken to some of the police officers, and I had rang their intercom on the wall. I told the one guy, hey, my name's John Holmberg. I'm a business owner in downtown. I wanted to know what the police plan on doing about the homeless population. They're preventing me from conducting business.
Yeah.
And the first guy, what he said to me is, yeah, you can take them with you. And so immediately we already have this idea of, okay, well, I'm here because I'd like to solve this problem. And the first reaction that I'm getting from a police officer who, in my, or maybe should be in our eyes, the society, our perception of the police, is that these are the people that are going to help us primarily. So if I'm going to go to this person and say, hey, I have an issue and I'd like something to be done about it, I'm here to talk to whoever I need to today. And their first response is, yeah, why don't you do something about it? And it's like, hey, I kind of already am. But it's the dismissal of my idea in the warrant of, hey, there's not really any what's a better word? I don't know. There's no value to it. I believe there's 100% value to what I was doing, and I'm not going to stop my efforts just because somebody's telling me not to.
Yeah, I remember him saying "take him with you" struck me.
He said that
It's
twice.
like,
Yeah.
like he said the quiet part out loud. Like his unconscious was speaking in that moment of how much he, being a representation, I think, of the police, which are the city,
Well,
hate
and
the
that's
unhoused population.
here's something that I will help clarify to people that maybe have a certain distinction towards the police. The police can only do as much as they're allowed to and as much as they are able to with the resources. I am not somebody who is very pro-police. This is more like the political side of things. But I'm not necessarily concerned with the political aspect of, okay, if, in general in this country, if police need more money, if they're going to do the right or wrong things with it, should we give them that money? That's not the issue. I have such a specific circumstance in mind when I strictly speak about what's happening in Binghamton and what the police officers that are speaking directly to me and telling me what they need. There's no interconnectivity between the governing offices and the city of Binghamton. So the issue does become that it comes from the mayor. He has an idea. A certain individual that works with the mayor's office has another idea. They collaborate. It's the wrong thing to do. That's exactly the problem we've ran into more recently, is that there's no interconnectivity between the government offices. And so you can't necessarily blame one branch when, yeah, they could be doing a lot more. And yeah, they don't have the right mentality of automatically, trying to strike down these people that are really, there for with good intentions and to complete something. When in reality, the situation doesn't provide for that environment to ever be fixed because there's no, that's not even the level to accomplish anything on. It's actually the people behind the scenes even farther. And so that's largely the issue. I can 100% agree with you. But my opinion, I'll say, of the Binghamton police has certainly changed, but it's certainly not been helped by the the taunting, I would almost say, of some of the police officers and the language they use.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm just curious because on one episode, I think you mentioned that the police want training, like special training to
Right.
work with the in-house population. I don't know. Do you know what that would look like or what they want? I'm
So
just
it's more just an
completely
idea.
morbidly curious.
Everything on the police's side, and again, I'm not a representative of the police department. I can't speak for them. I'm just reiterating basically the conversation that I've already had with supervisor, and the specifics aren't necessarily relevant to this case. So if you want to, for everybody listening, if you want the specifics, you can go back and look at, I think it's the first or second podcast, and I spoke to a police supervisor down there. Anyway, they understand that they don't have that training and that the best course of action, maybe some of them agree with this. I'm sure a lot of them don't even consider this, but some of the supervisors of the people in the power positions in the station, Binghamton Police Department, they do agree that there does need to be sensitivity training and that there needs to be a psychiatrist or there needs to be some type of, they know it's a mental health issue is what I'm saying. They understand that it's not a homeless issue on the basis of somebody doesn't have a house to live in. It's a personal issue of what's happened to this person to allow them now to live this life of not being, a conforming, member of society, that being the way of conforming to the laws available, right? So they understand, but they don't have the power to just say, yeah, we're going to start that. We're going, that comes from the mayor's office and that comes from the people that have, again, we're trying to be as vague as possible when directly speaking about what offices this is. But through my interpretation and through my conversations with these city members, it's my understanding that they don't have the ability to just say, okay, we're going to start doing this now, because that's not how the money works in the system. The police officers don't get to say, we need more money, and then they get more money.
Right. So, but they're wanting a psychiatrist or mental health people
they
on
are
there.
Yeah, they do understand that it's a deeper issue on the basis of mental health. Actually, I think it was about 3 weeks ago and this is relevant to Binghamton, so Robinson Street, and I know I'm talking a lot, I'll let you go for a bit after this, but so for Robinson Street, there was a homeless encampment, and the police officers had to come and break that up. Reason being, they had a couple of complaints, you can't technically do that, but also they found a dead body, which that implicates every person in that encampment in that crime. Because if you say, okay, we didn't know where that body was, okay, maybe there's an absolvent of guilt. But if you do say, oh, well, I knew it was in that tent, I didn't know they were dead or this or that, now you're implied into the crime. You could be covering up, you could be charged. So that's an issue. They had to go and break up that homeless encampment. But before they did, they went in a couple days before and they said, and again, maybe this is a problem coming from the police, they said, does anybody need any type of help, or we can help you guys get some jobs maybe? And they said yeah, exactly. So not a single person decided that, one, they wanted help, or two, that they wanted a job. And I did speak to them, like, do you guys have positions? They're like, yeah, there's crossing guards, there's this or that, there's something we could do for them. I said, do you maybe think it's an issue that it was coming from you guys, that they didn't want to do it because it was something you suggested? Because the perception of the police is so toxic in this area that they don't think you would do a good job with them. And he basically, you can't say no to that, so. But
there's no reason to trust the police, not even in only the city of Binghamton in general, particularly for unhoused people.
I could agree with that.
A police officer coming into their encampment, which is their house.
Right. It's like personal belongings. I think the as far as property laws go, if you own something technically you have the right to put it somewhere as long as you're not obstructing. I think it's like business, or if you're not like in collaboration with like a residential area that doesn't have, or has certain laws that you can't do stuff like that. So technically you can be, and people do this all over, they encamp all over, like downtown. I do want to switch the narrative a little bit, because I do agree with you that you can't really trust police, or maybe there's a profound sense that you can't trust the police in this country as a whole. I can't speak for the country as a whole. I haven't seen the whole damn thing. But just as well, I understand that is more of the reality that we live in. And in turn, I do want to change that narrative, because I would like to enjoy trusting the police and have a semblance of an idea that they're doing the right thing on a daily basis. Because at the end of the day, they're doing a lot of the stuff that you and I are happy that we don't have to do.
Yeah, I wouldn't work in the police force as a social worker because I don't want to do that.
Right. And there's nothing wrong with that.
I think another issue is that the police respond to crimes. They're not built to prevent social issues, right?
Yes.
So we're putting a lot of responsibility on them to act as, like, I don't know, social workers or like administrators to programs that they really have no business doing and they probably don't want to do anyway.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
So
Another thing I could say on that is that, and that's something I actually brought up in some of my conversations, is that, I said directly to this one police supervisor or sergeant, I believe. I won't use his name, but I said, I'm an ice cream man. I said, how often, or I said, as a police officer, how often do you expect to do my job? He goes, never. I said, okay. How often as an ice cream man am I expected to do a police officer's job? He goes, never. I said, great. So we're both in agreement that we should never be doing each other's job. Just as well, in that same conversation, we have to understand that, yes, there's roles in society and then people pick them up and decide that's what they choose to be in life. But for the police officer, they're already asked for so much, and they know that what they can provide is not exactly what's needed. They're basically just doing the best they can. I'm not going to say that there's not a multitude of failures or grievances that I could pick with the police departments in our area or the nation as a whole. But I will say that if it was politically savvy back in 2020 and 2021 to defund your police departments, and now we're suffering with a extent of, there's already a homelessness crisis because of the housing crisis, which is perpetuated by, corporate greed, but that's a separate deal entirely. Right. So, and now the issue becomes the police officers don't have the resources. The people in charge of allocating those resources are politically motivated, so they're not going to reallocate those resources. Yet they want to protect the homeless people as a protected class, which, whether that be worthy or not, I'm not going to comment on that. I do believe perhaps, I will comment on that. I do believe that, there should be extra protections for people that are disenfranchised. However, I have met people that are purely homeless because of the terrible person that they are, and they're basically, I can't, again, we're not going to get specific. I know personally an individual, I could name his name. He lives in Pennsylvania. I'm not going to say anything else besides that. He lives in Pennsylvania. Everybody in his family, he has either robbed from to buy drugs and alcohol, or gotten in a fight with multiple different times, stole his one friend's car to go do whatever, crazy stuff. So that guy doesn't have a nest anymore. He doesn't have a house to live in. He doesn't have people to spend time with, and that's his own damn fault. He's homeless because he's a terrible person and because he's got a lot of issues that he won't address. Right? A lot of people have these similar problems that they're homeless. But this guy's like a raging criminal, like hits his, like I forget if it was like his mom or like girlfriend's mom, but got in a physical altercation with somebody's mom, whether it be his mom or girlfriend's mom. And that's just like, okay, because he couldn't get his meth, because he wasn't able to meet his buddies, and he goes to like Florida like every 2 weeks to go like ball out on meth and stuff like that. So
okay,
right.
So it's a substance use issue.
Right, 100%. And the thing is, you get into an issue where, he doesn't have the resources left, but that's his own fault because, he's chosen to, this is, to talk the specifics is, I got to be careful because I don't even want to mention like where he went to school or anything, but this person specifically is to blame for all of his problems. The drugs and alcohol came after that. While he was in middle school and high school, he was a devil. He drove like this, whether it be like a mini bike or like a mini quad or something. He drove it like up to their school one time, and that was like skip school to do that, and like invited people to like a barn party or something like that. Like, not like crazy stuff, but just a bad kid, kind of like, right out of the gates. They had a lot of crazy stuff go down. I'll tell you the school afterwards, but not on live here. I got a great amount of stories from that school, not one that I went to, but anyway. So yeah, and these things came after the fact. So this person was already in like a bad position because of just like, maybe they had like mental health issues. But honestly, we just thought he was like, uses gender. Okay, he's a dude, but we just thought he was just like an asshole. He was just a bad person that just like his mentality was he liked to see bad things happen to people. He thought it was shitty and funny. And so when you have somebody who's just like fundamentally like what we could agree with in society is not a productive person, or is not healthy or conducive to like a healthy relationship with somebody, you leave these people behind because you don't have consideration for them anymore. But do they still need help? And should we help them?
Yes.
And whose responsibility does it become to help these people? Random strangers that see it? The people that in his family that have already cut him off because they know what he's going to do? So it's a very, very tricky system because the issue I would say is that, it's always through the consideration for, you're a common person or a stranger. It's if you don't know somebody's life and you already consider them to be like less than you, or you think they're like a worser person, you're not going to take that consideration or that time to even learn about them, to treat them like they should be treated. And that's where it
And
stems
that's
from.
the issue.
Yeah,
I think
that's the issue entirely.
that's so the issue, but also I think part of the solution to
Yeah.
the homelessness epidemic or problem, whatever you want to call it.
Sure. Yeah. Is that
Yeah.
consideration?
Right. And actually taking the time out to understand someone's psychic and someone's social experience, probably in a way that no one else has.
Yeah.
You were kind of hinting at like the broader conversation of like people. I think the liberal sort of like democratic mantra about unhoused people is like they didn't choose to be homeless and there's systemic factors why they're homeless. Yes, that is absolutely true. Most people who are unhoused don't want to be homeless, right? But there are psychological, kind of psychoanalytical reasons why people unconsciously choose to be unhoused.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
I know I sent you this article, this case study that you're going to link to.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'd said that in the podcast yet. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I will be posting the link to this case study. I believe it's only 8 pages. It's actually a pretty good read so far. Excuse me. But yeah, we'll definitely have that in the description if you guys want to check that out. Go ahead now.
Yeah, it's a case study by Brian Smith. He's a social worker and a psychoanalyst in Denver, Colorado. And this case study is just one, patient he examines, but it talks about the psychological reasons why people actually choose to be homeless and choose to remain homeless, and how that works out for them or how it doesn't work out, and how they kind of become the products of hate for their cities, and for the citizens and the police and every other system.
Right.
So I'll just give a brief overview and quote some things that I like, because he does get to solutions or recommendations at the end, which I think is really helpful. So he demonstrates his client. He calls her Leona. It's a fake name.
Yep.
But he says like Leona is the identified patient of her community, meaning like basically the agency he works at hates her, and I'm using the word hate.
Yeah, no, that's fine. It's a proper
representation. For reasons.
Yep.
I think it's a helpful word in this case. Mm-hmm. And the city is kind of done with her. She's been kicked out of every shelter, kicked out of most hotels, and, she doesn't have a job. She can't afford, to live anywhere really stable. She had recent gastric bypass surgery,
right?
And because she's unhoused, she can't take her meds. She can't get her meds.
She's having a problem with her body's not processing the medications correctly after that procedure, I believe.
Right.
That's as far as I've read into it, but yes. And
she eats like food that is not good after having that surgery because she only has access to like food pantry food, which is usually a whole other issue. Usually like expired bread and like bakery goods, which is not.
It's secondhand, food basically.
Good to nutrition, right?
Yeah.
But there's this kind of like push and pull with Brian and this patient Leona. He gets her housed a couple times, and she trashes the housing, and she invites other homeless people in to stay with her, which is like very nice. And I don't want to psychoanalyze that, but I see her reason why. But every time he gets her housed, she kind of messes it up somehow. And he begins to think that it's like a purpose accident, the way she's messing up these houses. And it's true. And it comes out, and he eventually says, like, he loses his mind, and he's like, Leona, don't you know how hard I've been working for you? And it's the kind of rupture in their relationship that really, really helps her take in the help. But I just want to read
go for it. It's very interesting.
That when I was listening to an episode, I actually thought of. It says, getting people housed is difficult. Keeping people housed can often be when the real work begins. Much like the intense medical regimen required to ensure a host body receives and does not reject its transplanted organ, Leona's fear of being alone in a home seemed to be more than just loneliness or grief pressing up against her. There was a way in which her isolation signaled a looming threat for her, like a child alone in her room, hearing the footsteps of an approaching aggressor. When manic, Leona would preempt this violation by forgoing the kinds of boundaries that could be crossed in the first place, making her impossible to pin down. When thought of in the context of opting for tenuous shelter over the suffocation of a home, he quotes Farrell. Farrell states, the subjective experience of freedom is a powerful undercurrent, which may serve to protect against feelings of anxiety and powerlessness. In this way, the confines of options that all seem unacceptable both play out in the reality of Leona's housing as well as in our transference, countertransference. Transference is the way you feel about your therapist. Countertransference is the way your therapist feels about you, pretty much.
Interesting.
The themes of feeling more tired and withdrawn now begin to emerge as Leona and I talked about her recent period of mania in which she was constantly, quote, on the go and, quote, out in the world. We explored how her depression may have been a reaction to this unsustainable way of being. Atwood, he quotes, has described the magical emancipation of mania, causing her to slip into a dark despair. Looked at differently, as the scholar Parker Palmer has described depression, perhaps it was not the hand of an enemy trying to crush you, but the hand of a friend trying to press you to the ground on which it is safe to stand on. Some people choose to remain unhoused because the experience and sense of freedom and protection from feelings of anxiety and powerlessness. The confines of options available to them may seem unacceptable, leading them to choose tenuous shelter over the feeling of suffocation they associate with a home.
Oh, wow. Now, that's something that's very profound to me. Now, I could definitely see there being, for example, I'd seen something on the internet a while ago. This individual was a heroin addict, and he was very open about this. He had an interview with somebody on the street, and he'd basically been asked, like, when are you going to go back? He said, because, the way he spoke about things, how he was reminiscing, oh, I missed this, I missed that. I'm looking forward to the day I can go back. Okay, when you go back? He said, well, not yet. He goes, well, what do you mean not yet? He goes, where do you sleep tonight? He goes, I don't know where I'm sleeping tonight. The place I usually go is taken, so I don't know where I'm sleeping tonight. I might just not sleep tonight. And it's like, that's the preferred reality? That's what you would... The thing is, you basically have to, if you want to help these people in the way that you think they need to be helped, you have to change their minds. And that is an impossible task, let alone before you even begin on this task of doing something.
No, you're not going to change their minds.
And the thing is, they recognize that, or at least this individual did. He was a heroin addict from, I think, Seattle, at least on the West Coast, I think Oregon, either way. So, and he had said, no, I'm not ready. And that's what they actually left the conversation with. He goes, okay, God bless you or something like that. I go, yep, thank you, man, But that's the thing. It's that not only was he an addict, but he also knew that, in his heart of hearts, that's not what he wanted. Even though maybe his life would be drastically better, he could make money, he could get a job, reform relationships maybe he had squandered in the past. But that's not what he wanted. And it wasn't dictated from the drugs at that point. It was because that's just not the life he wanted to lead. And that's a difficult thing to see, because when you and I, say people that are not necessarily homeless or disenfranchised by, a larger force beyond our power, we could be upset that these people are not doing the things that would be easier for us, or at least what we consider to be easier. So it becomes a us versus them type of dynamic when it's like, well, I'm doing what I need to do, and it's difficult for me too. Personally, myself, I deal with a lot of mental illness, and I've dealt with things in the past that were, very traumatic for me. I still deal with them now today. But that doesn't mean that, well, it could mean at some point if something so drastically terrible happens to me, I do become homeless, and now I get into that rut of I don't want to be anything but homeless. That becomes the entire issue of you cannot change somebody's mind, even if you think, which you might know, what is best for them.
Right, think. I think emphasis on think. Yeah.
Right, yeah, exactly. Yeah. What we hope for people, or what we can all collectively agree without them in that conversation, what is best for them, is not what's best for them. Simply because if it was, they probably would have done something already. Or, in that moment, what's best for them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just subjective. We can't actually say, okay, well, you got, one shoe on. That can't be the life you want to live. I'll get you another shoe. Oh, fuck that. I don't want another shoe. Well, okay. Well, why? To us, it just doesn't make any sense, but to them, maybe it does. And, yeah, that's just, a furthering of that idea even more. But
yeah, that's a good example, for sure. This kind of leads me into the recommendations that Brian talks about in his paper.
That's a great idea. Let's get to some solutions that we can have on this channel for people to kind of look back on. I might even pin this video for a little bit, so if there's any type of help we can provide in this video, we can send people this way.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be a little bit abstract, but I think that's really the solution. It's multifaceted. It's not one thing.
It's an incredibly nuanced issue that multiple people need to work on simultaneously. It's not one thing that's going to be solved by a patron saint individual. It's going to have to be a long process that a lot of people get their hands on. But go ahead, Dom. I'm very excited for what you'd like to say.
Yeah, well, first of all, I think we need to banish the idea that we know what people need.
Boom, perfect.
I think particularly...
Say it one more time for us, Dom.
We have to abolish the idea that we as people know what other people need.
Thank you.
I think that's what the profession of social work is reckoning with right now, on a larger scale. It's like, this kind of idea of forced helping. Like, who is that really helping? Is that helping unhoused people, or is it feeding some weird, like, narcissistic need we have to feel like we're the saviors, right?
Yeah.
So I guess returning to people back the idea in the sense of choice in whatever way we can give that to them. Mm-hmm. Brian talks about how Leona would constantly find issues with her housing, like a leaky faucet, her house number missing from the front door.
Yeah.
And he was like, why do you care about these things? Mm-hmm. And it wasn't about the faucet. It wasn't about the numbers on the door. It was that she was forced into these housing situations that she didn't choose.
Right.
And they all felt like a replication of her trauma, which happened way back, when she was a baby and a kid. But, those things follow us and they affect us in ways that are unconscious. Anyway, so pretty much to paraphrase and get down to solutions, I think, well, one, it's going to take a long time.
Right. A good thing to do.
Yeah. And Brian in this article, and there is a program in New York City, Philly, and parts of Vermont, I believe. It's called Insight for All. And it's a program that provides free long-term psychoanalytic psychotherapy to unhoused people. Yeah. And it's no questions asked, no strings attached. You can go and see your therapist one time. You can see them 30 times.
And this is all free, covered by the association or the organization?
It's covered by, I believe there's a nonprofit involved, but I do know that a lot of the therapists work pro bono. So,
oh wow!
Am I saying we should bring this to Binghamton? Maybe not.
I do have a question.
I think we can learn from it.
I agree with that. This is something that you would maybe know a lot more than I do. So I know for lawyers in certain states, most states, there is a certain amount of pro bono work they have to do every year. Legally, they have to provide. And most of them do because friends ask stupid questions about, legal questions. Or whatever. But for a social worker, is that also something that, if I know you're licensed, but you're not like a psychiatrist. You just don't have an MD attached to your to what you do.
No.
Does that, is there any type of... Yeah.
It's not required, but I think... not to sound whatever, but I think social workers, particularly compared to psychiatrists, psychologists, or mental health counselors, do end up doing a lot of the pro bono work anyway.
I agree with that, yeah.
And many organizations pay their social workers basically nothing.
That's also true. Unfortunately, that's also true.
That's my own bias coming in on,
that's not necessarily a bias. We can say that the people that do very difficult work that not a lot of people find reward in, but it still ends up getting needed to be done, they don't get paid appropriately. Yeah, I think if hard work deserves good pay, right?
Yeah, but I think social workers do end up doing a lot of pro bono work. whether like giving people, a free session undercharging, or just doing work outside of their actual job in the community, like activism and, legislative stuff too. But there's no requirement, no.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, that's because I would say, obviously I've spent a lot of time because we do the holistic health and wellness fair, and so I did a lot of groundwork in our first couple of years, and I'll be spending more time within the fair now. To actually, I haven't really spoke about this in the podcast so far, but the holistic health and wellness fair, we started it back in 2021, I believe was our first year. And it's basically just a chance for Binghamton, a different sense of healing, the holistic modalities of healing when it comes to not just, prescribing a medication from your doctor. It's seeing a psychiatrist, or it's seeing a nutritionist, or it's seeing a specialist in whatever you would like to, address the problem. Holistic means holy. So when you address something holistically, that means you're taking all parts of the body and its consequences in mind. So for my mother, she's a nurse practitioner. She's a family nurse practitioner, FNP. And she works with a lot. Her business, Wellness Center, which sponsors the fair, puts on the fair, her entire dream basically is the movement towards the holistic modalities of healing. Because you cannot cure somebody just by looking at what's causing them harm. You have to look at the entire person and where it comes from, where it stems from. Because just as well, and maybe this is like, this is more traditional Chinese medicine. This isn't something she does purely, but I had a meeting with a psychiatrist yesterday, and we talked about TCM, or traditional Chinese medicine, for a little bit. And basically she said, and what she agreed with, is that if there's something that helps somebody, and you can notice that it's doing better than a different, more regulated form of healing, say a medication that your insurance pays for versus massage or acupuncture, what would you prefer? Getting healed in general, or being healed and needing more healing to spend money on, through whatever modality that is with your doctor?
Yeah.
Basically, do you want the appropriate care, or do you want generalized care? And that's there's a lot of ebbs and flows in that, and hopefully we can have a combination of the two, both Western and Eastern practices of medicine. But through the Holistic Health and Wellness Fair, the entire idea is to get people that have this idea of, yes, we understand that there are different things that this society of ours needs, and it's not necessarily just a pill bottle.
Yeah, right. You can't medicate away, homelessness or deep set psychological issues that perpetuate these things.
Or you can't think that the problem is purely something that is a mental issue. Because yes, there's a lot of mental issues as well. But, if you're saying that we're going to put somebody on, what's it, Suboxone? Is that what it is? Whatever it is for people that are heroin addicts, they go on it.
Suboxone.
Yeah, Suboxone. So you can't say that that's the best thing to do. Yeah, obviously they're going to go through withdrawals if they're like a serious user, or whatever regard. But there has to be something better for them than putting them on Suboxone.
Well, I think it depends. I mean, some people really do take Suboxone and they stop using, and they have a really nice life.
Yeah, that is true. But, I'll speak from my personal experience. When I was in the mental hospital back in 2019, in September, after I crashed my car trying to kill myself, thankfully I did not, I lived. But anyway, one of the people I spoke to, and we're not going to give her name, but she was a heroin addict. And this is how I found out. We're talking about, what I'm in for and whatever. People were very surprised that I was actually non-voluntary. A lot of people there were voluntary, and I was the only non-voluntary person. Because I attempted suicide. The only other person in there was somebody who had taken all their pills, and they had a tooth that when they pumped their stomach, she had a fake tooth. So when they pushed that thing down her throat, they broke that tooth off. She swallowed it. So the entire time so it's just her and I are the only two involuntary people, and she's got one tooth missing. So it's kind of funny. But this person I spoke to, she was voluntary, and I was like, hey, I didn't want to say, oh, what are you in for? But it kind of came out like that, and she goes, heroin. I was like, oh, okay, and I got quiet, and she was like, it's okay, I'm not doing it right now, am I? And I was like, you're right. So I was like, tell me about yourself. And she basically said that her experiences, she was like in and out of rehab, and this is like however the 10th or whatever time that she had been into CREMS 3 at this point. And, we could say that there's like failures on multiple parts of our society when it comes to the safety nets we allow in medical wards or whatever, But they're given a day. So she was in CREMS and she was going to be moved into rehab, but they gave her one single day. So she was in for like 2.5 weeks. She got out for a day, and then she was going to rehab for like another 2 weeks. That single day that she got out, she relapsed, and they didn't find her again.
Yeah, that's pretty unfortunately very common.
It's
Abstinence syndrome,
incredibly
they call
common,
it.
incredibly common. People were saying,
Yeah,
yeah, it was a terrible, because we knew it was going to happen. She was like, I'm so proud of the person I become in here. She's crying every single day. We did like art therapy. We did we did three different types of therapy 3 times a day. We did so much therapy together, and
yeah,
we all were like sick to our stomachs. She left before I did, and so like my group of people that were in there, we were like, she's not going to rehab because she gets a day to go out and like go relapse with all of her friends, and she's not going to want to go to rehab. And that's exactly what happened.
yeah, yeah. That's really sad.
It is really, and what
It's
could you
hard
do about
to
that?
hold that. Yeah, but I think what you're saying is the solution to these things, whether it's homelessness or chaotic substance use, is multifaceted. It's not
100%.
one thing. It's not one drug. So before I go, because I got to go in
No,
a few
you're good.
minutes, but
100%.
I want to get into Brian's kind of the policy implications he calls on. So
Sure, absolutely. Go ahead.
he demonstrates how long term, which I think long term is considered more than 6 months, but long term psychoanalytic therapy, which focuses on the unconscious, it focuses on your childhood and kind of uprooting everything that has happened to you and how that impacts you. And I think more in a more modern sense, it focuses on the relationship. Your psychoanalytic therapist is there for you, and they're going to use themselves as a tool to heal you, and they're not going to tell you what you need, and they're really going to join you in that. So that seems to have long-term efficacy for keeping unhoused people in treatment rather than more shorter-term therapies that focus symptom reduction and crossing off these treatment plans, and then they discharge you out into the world, and then you never come back.
Right. Yeah.
Having that steady attachment figure, I think beyond the article, I think clinically that is what makes people better. And then he also talks about housing first policies. This could be a episode in itself.
Sure.
But housing first generally means that the unhoused person is given housing before anything else. So like particularly I think around here, most programs, they either require you to be in treatment, either mental health treatment or like substance use treatment in order to be housed. And like, I don't know, if you think about that, that's pretty kind of messed up.
It is backwards. It's backwards.
You should give people housing and then expect them to be able to go to therapy and to go to treatment if that's what they want.
Or, sorry to just to interject quickly, but what if somebody is not a user? What if somebody is not a alcoholic? I'm sure they're less likely to get into these programs simply because they're not the people they're hoping to address directly.
Yeah, I mean, usually then kind of the mental health system is used against them, I'll say.
Okay. Sure.
I mean, most people who are unhoused have mental health issues just from being unhoused.
That's
so
true. Yeah.
But I think being housed in itself, aside from treatment, is also part of what helps people become better. But you have to give them, and that's the point of what I'm saying, you have to give people a choice. And you have to allow them to rupture their housing and rupture their relationship with treatment providers. And then you have to allow them to go and come back kind of as they please in order for them to trust you and to trust whatever system you're wanting them to function in.
That's really, I find that very profound. One of the things that I have as a principle of my life, it's when I create new relationships with people, I understand that if it's going to be a long relationship, I have to expect at some point that we're going to be angry at each other or have some type of interaction to where it's like unhealthy, or not unhealthy, but we're just at each other's throats, say. So I worked with, I won't say the business, but I worked with this one business, and things didn't get to work out exactly as I hoped. And, I could say at some point when I started that relationship, I knew that, I prefaced it, I didn't say this to him at all. I'm so vague, right? But anyway, to this specific person, I knew something at some point was going to go wrong and they were going to be upset at me. So when that time comes, I can't jeopardize a relationship, and I can't feel differently about them because this is how things should go. If you don't have a relationship where eventually at some point you get angry at this person or you're upset by something that they did, that means that if you're willing to throw everything you had with them away for that, it's not worth the relationship at all. So if you're going to help somebody and they're going to do these things, expect that to happen and make that part of the treatment plan.
Yeah, right. Don't kick them out of the relationship or the program because of it. And I think that's what helps in the kind of therapy I do. I mean, I hope there's a time when a client is pissed at me or a client is mad that I did something or said something or I interpreted something wrong, because that sort of rupture and repair is what makes the both psychotherapeutic relationship and just personal relationship more meaningful and more attuned.
Absolutely. I agree with that so much, because that it really is a basis of my life, is that I know that if it's a worthy relationship, that at some point it will be strained.
Yeah. That's pretty much the moral of the story. I think for most of these issues, but I have to go.
No, that's totally fine. I'm going to go on for a little bit longer. Dom, thank you so much for your time today. I think we had an incredible conversation, and I hope this video does very well. I will say quickly, with the last 2 minutes that we have, I have been creating a list of people that have reached out to me or that I've spoken to that have interest in this specific regard of helping the homeless population in Binghamton. I think one of the things that would be most helpful is to get a focus group of people that are directly impacted with mental health or substance abuse issues, and we can get these people together similar to, say, like an AA meeting, and just give them information and allow them to speak for themselves. If we give people these opportunities to actually become people again, they're going to start acting like people again, at least in my mind. Sorry if that's a more rugged way to say, but truly, through the conversations we've had today, we understand that these people need help, but it needs to come from themselves, and we can do it.
Yeah.
So if you would like to, I've already put, I don't know if this is too forbearing, but I already put your name on this list. It's only like 3 people. If you would like to, if you think this is something interesting, I thought I'd mention it on the podcast as well for anybody else in our community that would want to maybe contribute. But if that's maybe an idea that you think is valid, then we can go forward with that, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, I can't commit to any time commitment or anything.
Oh, no, that's not what I'm expecting at all.
Definitely interested in the future, for sure.
Perfect. Well, Dom, thank you so much for your time and insight today. I think we had an incredible conversation, like I said. And any closing argument or last word for our viewers today? I'm sure we'll have you on again, because this was really good.
Yeah, I think I've said everything I've needed to say. Just be a good person to other people.
Be a good person to other people. I think I'll title the podcast something like "Consideration for Those You Don't Know" or something like that. But like I said, great stuff today, Dom. Thank you so much. That'll be all from us. Is there you don't want any of your personal information? So the vague entity that is Dom could be his name, could not be his name, could be a his or her, could be an anything, but we don't know because this person is important to us to keep private.
Thank you.
Yeah, anytime. Thank you very much, Dom. We'll do a little cut for now. That was Dom, a social worker from the Binghamton area or Broome County area. Incredibly insightful person. Very happy to have him on. I have nothing but praises to sing of him. He was our first guest that we had on. It's pretty low tech. I understand that the audio recording is not incredibly clear, or it's not as clear as it possibly could be, or it wasn't as clear as my voice. But just as well, I think we got a lot of good content today. I don't really have much else to add besides what we've already spoken about. I think we have a good direction of where we'd like to go from here. The person that I am, I like actionable efforts. I like things that we can do and succeed in, or we can actually put in effort and see the fruits of our labor. So if we're able to do something, I want to see it actually done. I don't want the speculative talk. I don't want the ideas. I don't want the forbearing anticipation of doing something. I want to actually do it. So it's with people like Dom, a very insightful and educated person, and he's got a lot of information and he's got a lot of resources that are able to facilitate what we can accept and believe to be the correct opinion about things. So if you have the right idea about what to do, you can finally begin to properly address the problem. And I think, I have, once again, more praises to sing for this guy, but I do truly believe that the issue in downtown Binghamton, or the issue just as a national whole or for homelessness in general, is that if we worry about the individual and we get them the help they directly need, speaking to them, not hoping to generalize the population and doing something that would be beneficial for us in the long run, but solve their problems secondarily, I think we could actually see some true results that are going to solve, or at least partially solve, this problem. I don't think there's a world too dissimilar from the one we live in that we can expect to hope, or we can hope and expect that one day will become our preferred reality or the actual world we live in. Something that would be similar to, hopefully, homelessness is truly a solved issue, to where if there was an issue, there's almost like a hotline you can call. I'm on the cusp of homelessness, or I need, almost like an emergency line maybe. These are ideas that I have that, I'm not necessarily the person with all the resources that know how to do this, but I think if enough people agree that this is the right thing to do, and enough of those people are educated individuals who have experience working with these people in the past, then there's no opportunity. Well, there's nothing but opportunity for us to make mistakes, but there should be less of an opportunity for us to make mistakes. Hopefully we're on the right path, is what I'm saying. So with that in mind today, everybody, I'm going to link in the description the article that Don was quoting for us. I'm going to actually take a look at that myself because I didn't get to read the whole thing yet. I think it was very, very profound, and the case study is very relevant to the conversations we were having today. So that's going to be all for us today. Thank you, everybody, for tuning into the In and Out podcast. I'm your host, John, and we will see you in the next one. Thank you very much for watching, and take care. Peace out. Peace out. Peace out. Peace out. Peace out. Goodbye, guys.